Hi everybody, welcome back to Fantasy Theory. In this video, we're going to break down The Boys Season 4, Episode 4, because there's a lot of huge reveals, or like kind of a huge episode because there's a few big reveals that go on, especially with Frenchie and Huey and Homelander, and there's a lot that goes on. But let's jump right into the video. Let's not waste any time. Leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe. Let's get into the video. It is titled Wisdom of the Ages, which is named after The Boys Highland Laddie issue number 5, which is a story most about Huey, and who he does deal a lot with this episode, primarily the hard decision that he must make with not only his dad, but with A-Train. A-Train and Huey have the long history of literally how the show started, so there's a lot that actually falls onto this episode and the deeper meaning here. We start the episode with different concept art for Homelander's suits. As we see, it says Homelander 1987 on top, with different versions of the suit that he has now with different colors. Primarily the colors are red, gold, and blue in some different pattern than what he has now, like gold being the primary color instead of blue, or red being the primary color. It's all just different versions of the suit that we have now. No difference in the suit, but we also see him kind of wearing a helmet, so I wonder if that will come into play at some point during the season. Maybe we see photos of Marty, who is the assistant director that we will meet later in the episode, who does, well, you know. And then we see Frank, who was working in the lab. Another shot of the paper saying nervous system mystery revealed, and a memo from Vought Barbara, who we will see later in the episode, to all the staff, reminding everyone Project Odessa is highly classified and not to share this with anybody else. The security cameras go out in the facility, and the elevator starts to come down to the floor with none other than John, well, Homelander. And he's holding a Fudgy the Whale cake. And if you've seen the trailer, you kind of figured this is where we will see the huge bloody scene that will be coming up. And obviously we know how he doesn't have the best intentions coming in here because of what happened at the end of the last episode. Even though he brought a Fudgy the Whale cake, it's just so sinister that he would bring that and make them feel like they're on his side for what he's going to do to them later in the episode one by one. I also have to ask, did he go out and buy that himself, or does he have somebody from Vought go and get it for him? Like, you know, did he just go to a Carvel and get one? This also, of course, is the room that he was having the dreams or nightmares of back in the first episode. So it's kind of setting the plot from that first episode that he was going to come back to here to kind of, I guess, rid the past of that, or kind of feel better about his, like, demons being dead at this point. He's referred to as John here, but he makes it clear every time they call him John that he is Homelander, and will correct them, like I said, every single time. There's a photo we see of young Homelander with longer hair, Barbara, who's the woman who leads Homelander to the Red Door back in episode 1. In the photo, we also see Marty, Frank, and one more guy that we don't know. I wonder if it's somebody from a previous episode, or somebody that just maybe have died, or something, like why weren't they there? It's interesting. It could be nothing though. But we hop over to Butcher, where we see him in the effects of the tumor on his body. He tries to shower, and we see the worm that's in him move up his spine until he passes out, hitting his head on the faucet until he sees Becca. Huey's dad at this point has become brain dead, which will ultimately lead to Huey down this weird dark path with A-Train, and like kind of having to choose between like what he should do with his father, you know, let nature just do its thing, or kind of like put it into his own hands and almost play God at this point. We even see in a trailer someone walking in the hospital gown with blood coming from them, so maybe it's safe to assume that this is Huey's dad after this episode, because, you know, as we know, he will get the Compound V, but we'll get to that. We see commercials of V52 Expo, which is a parody of Disney's D23, where they announce movies and shows coming up. At this event, some people you can meet is Sister Sage, Homelander, Firecracker, Sam, and Kate from Gen V, the Guardians of Godolkin. Adam Burke, the director of pretty much all the Vought movies and shows. We saw him in the other episode when they were filming with Will Ferrell, and A-Train. With a sneak peek of the behind the scenes we saw before, again, of the training of A-Train with Will Ferrell. We get Tech Knight show The Whole Truth, which is from Gen V, as well as the 4 students involved, like Marie, Andre, Emma, and Jordan, who, might I add, is in female form. And if you didn't watch in Gen V, they all have different powers like that, and why I say Jordan is in female form is because they can turn from a man or a woman. This is all that you can watch on Vought Plus, which is a play on Disney Plus, obviously the streaming service. Cameron Coleman comes up with a headline: Singer's approval rates dip to a new low. Singer and Starlight agree on a partnership where Starlight even agrees to put on a suit once again and go by Starlight, even if that means she will have to make her own suit just to kind of push the agenda to stop these soups. And they eventually agree on this, but that doesn't last long by the end of the episode. Frenchie and Colin are listening to Crying Time by Ray Charles, which will kind of be a theme between them because there's going to be a lot of crying with them in this episode. Frenchie decides to ask Colin about his family, even though he knows what happens to them and he's the killer behind it. Colin's mom is a judge on the case of Frenchie's employer, which is what led to Frenchie doing what he did to them. Colin was there the night Frenchie killed them and hid under his bed so Frenchie couldn't see him, and all he noticed from the killer were scars on his ankle, which was ultimately Frenchie's ankle, where we see him cover his ankle up with the sheets so that he doesn't actually see it yet, but this will play later on in the episode to prove that he was the killer. Firecracker has her live show right across from Starlight's HQ, which will set up the huge ending between them. Sister Sage gives a briefing to the Seven without Homelander and also to a few influencers. The influencers are leading a anti-Starlight agenda online, where we see them directing certain hashtags and things to say on things like Twitter and all that, like for example, fuck your feelings and arrogant white feminism. The Deep asks Sage to get fried pickles from Flavortown, which of course is Guy Fieri's restaurant, so it's cool that, you know, Guy Fieri kind of exists in this because Guy Fieri is kind of goated. We see just how, like, racist Firecracker can be when she says to Sage,
you know, when I first met you, I thought you were kind of uppity, but you're one of the good ones.
And it's just, you know, come on now, like really? Firecracker says she is having a 6-hour show on the Vought News Network, where she even mentions the likes of Kanye West, who will be on the show later on, but we don't actually ever get to see him because maybe Starlight, what she did, cuts the show, or maybe they did it in between everything, but that's the only time we'll hear about Kanye West in the show, and you know, it's just maybe in this universe he's not Ye and Kanye West. I don't know. I'm just theorizing here, you know. Mother's Milk, Frenchie, and Butcher walk into Starlight's HQ, where Mother Milk said he's bringing Butcher back into the boys while he wears a Big Pun shirt. Butcher is almost onto Starlight and Firecracker's history, but Starlight, who might I add is not happy Butcher is back, does not want to talk about it and shuts it down, saying it's nothing. Homelander starts his sinister plan with Frank, saying Frank used to lock him in the oven room to see how much he could take, and as we see, he says his skin did not char, but it still at the same time hurt a lot. He also made some shot, and he made a game about it, and that's kind of like the sinister thing that he's like reliving these moments, only that Homelander is on the opposite side of this and making them suffer for what they did to him. Homelander, having his traumatic childhood, being raised in the lab, tortured, is pretty much seeking revenge at this point. I also love that during the show we get a very, very, very quick flashes of Homelander as a child in the oven screaming, begging for mercy. Frank says he was just doing his job until Homelander makes him get into the oven and burns him alive, and the show does not hold back with showing this, and it's just gruesome, and I don't even want to talk about it that much. At a shipping yard, we see Huey bring Kimiko as his backup, his muscle, where he meets with A-Train. This is a true example of desperate times call for desperate measures when he asks A-Train to grab Compound V from Homelander. A-Train asks where is the talking goatee and gold chain, which is interesting because why would he want to meet with him again unless he's kind of, you know, turning even more at this point, because it seems like Huey said something that would make him come and make him believe that he was talking to Mother's Milk. When A-Train leaves, they are ambushed by some people. Firecracker and the Deep sing Up Where We Belong, and whilst that, talking to Mother Milk, Butcher sees Becca when he starts to admit to Mother's Milk he needs help and he may not be able to complete his mission before he goes. Mother Milk says that what if Ryan doesn't want to go with him? And Butch responds, you have to make him. So he's almost putting the mission onto Mother's Milk at this point, but Becca doesn't really like that, it seems like, from his visions. When they meet up with Firecracker, Butcher threatens to leak an image of Firecracker's past when she meets an underage person, and she decides to click the tweet button herself to out herself instead of doing what they want her to do. You could also see Butcher's profile picture is his dog. We get the return of Ezekiel, the pastor from season 1. Right after Firecracker goes on the show and confesses her past and says she found Jesus through this, pleading for forgiveness, while in the same breath exposing Starlight, saying she blinded a mother when she was involved in her first save, and not as innocent and like glamorous as everybody thought she was. After this, we see Butcher give the keys to her bus to Frenchie to go investigate, and we also notice that she has a Confederate flag on her keys, which is just very in character for her. But during this, A-Train snoops through Homelander's stuff to get the Compound V for Huey. We had wild theories from this shot in the trailer, but after all that, it's just, well, his pubes. It's Homelander's pubes, his gray pubes. A-Train finds the secret milk chamber from Homelander and then finally finds the Compound V, which is notable that there are a few missing. So I wonder if this is just innocent to make it not obvious that he took one, or if maybe Homelander has been using it on himself or Ryan. And in the process, Ashley has been leaving floaters in Homelander's toilet, and they both catch each other, meaning that they both have some type of truce not to say anything to Homelander, but I believe this will come back to haunt at least one of them in the future. We see Homelander's growth on the wall at the facility when he reaches 5'10" at the age of 16, where we see his name is crossed out, so the name John is out, and Homelander is there. So maybe that's when he finally took control of who he was, and he didn't want to be known as John anymore, the tortured kid, but instead Homelander, the hero. And then we get the scene of Homelander crazily laughing, and if you watch the episode, you know exactly what happens here, and it just really wouldn't be The Boys without it, like guess, right? But I'm not going to really talk about this because this was pretty gross. And you know what happens here. But let's move on. Huey and Kimiko are ambushed when Huey hurts his ankle and Kimiko gets split in half briefly, leaving Huey to fight someone off by himself, which never usually happens, so it's good to see him hold his own and actually kill the guy. Kimiko, we find out that the enemy tracking her, she led into the shining light, and then she leaves them. So there's really not much so far with that storyline, but I think we'll pick up within the last 4 episodes. It's crazy that I'm already saying the last 4 episodes. I should say halfway point. I should be more glass half full, but this show is just great, I think, in my opinion, and I don't want it to end. In the trailer bus, Frenchie finds a bedazzled red, white, and blue pistol purse as well as prescription pills. We also see her name is Misty Tucker. We find out live on TV that Starlight had an abortion at 6 weeks. Starlight eventually loses it and beats Firecracker down on live TV, and in the same breath, Ezekiel is fighting Frenchie and Butcher when Butcher uses the liquid nitrogen to freeze his arm off. Mother Milk stops Starlight, and we see someone on TikTok live streaming it with the comments like "no" and "staged, so fake," and "is it weird I like her more now?" and "biggest truth bomb ever." I mean, the people are loving it and also hating it, and it's divided, but she beats the brakes off of Firecracker. I mean, Firecracker doesn't even get a punch in. When Ezekiel is about to choke Butcher out, it goes black, and we see pretty much Ezekiel's remains everywhere. So we don't really know what happens when Butcher blacks out, if he almost has powers, from what we will find out a little later in the episode. We learn that Homelander's mom, he lasered himself out of her womb, killing her and other nurses as a baby. We also hear they trained him to need love and to be this crazy psychopath where Homelander is. And, you know, it's a little upsetting, and it's like, these people are kind of sick too. It was a way to make Homelander obedient in some way. Frenchie has a breakdown and reveals the scars on his ankles and tells Colin it was him, where Colin beats him up and almost kills him, where he eventually stops and says if he ever sees him again, he will finish the job and kill him. Sage reveals that she gets dumb, and she gives herself a lobotomy to her brain, which will make her dumb, because after a few hours, it eventually just regenerates to be back to normal. So the only way that she could really like the Deep is when she's like stupid. And we also see this disgusting lobotomy that I don't even want to show or talk about. Starlight meets Huey, and we see both of them comfort each other. When he says it was their decision to have the abortion, she kind of makes a face at him, which made me think like something else was up. I don't know. I could be reading too much into this, but I just felt like something was wrong in this scene. Starlight gets a phone call while Huey goes back to his dad, and the phone call from Starlight is from President Singer, who says she is now viewed differently by the public and wants to cut ties with her. A-Train gives Huey the Compound V, and Huey then ends up forgiving him for Robin's death, ultimately the reason why all of this happened. Out of the shadow, Butcher comes out catching Huey, telling Huey to stop while he's behind and not to use it, saying he used it to stop the disease on him, but it only sped up his death process. Huey decides not to give it to his dad, but it seems like his mother had the same plan with the Compound V and then gave it to his father, and we see the scene of his father awakening from his vegetative state. Back to Homelander, we see he did not hold back and killed everyone in that room, leaving Barbara in there to face the consequences of everybody being murdered by him. And we just see he looks pretty proud of himself after what he did when he's covered in blood, but I can't even show that. And we close this up with Where We Belong. So all in all, I thought this was the best episode of the season so far. I had a lot of fun watching it. It was pretty crazy. A lot of fighting, a lot of action, a lot of reveals. You know, pretty much this whole episode dealt with people's past. And, you know, does it really define us like Starlight's past or Frenchie's past? A-Train's past, Butcher's past. That's a big thing in the season, and I really like how they flesh these things out. I really hope to see A-Train turn the tide because he's quickly becoming one of my favorite characters on the show. But you let me know what you thought of the episode. Leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe. I got a few theories that I want to talk about in a couple other videos. But thanks for watching, and have an incredible day.